Welcome to our education discussion. Today's education discussion is Nurture and Emotional Wellbeing in School with our guest presenter, Gerry Diamond. This is the format for our education discussion session. We're only going to record Gerry's presentation. For those of you who haven't been to one of our events before, we've been around for over 50 years. We were originally started by adoptive parents for adoptive families who were struggling to access support. We're not an adoption agency and have never been involved in matching children with families. We've always been an organisation that seeks to offer support, and the organisation has grown over the years and now supports a much greater range of care experienced families, as well as all families affected by prenatal alcohol exposure. This just gives an overview of the different services that we offer. We start with our core entry-level support services through to more enhanced services for families with greater needs. We also run the FASD Hub Scotland, which supports care experienced and biological families affected by FASD. We offer youth support through the E-Project. We support kinship families through the Kinship Care and Advice Service Scotland, and we offer more enhanced support to adoptive families through the TESA programme. The one thing that isn't actually on that screen, because it's our newest project, we are always growing, is the Brothers and Sisters project, which is looking to support siblings affected by their care experience. So, welcome, Gerry. Many of you will know Gerry already. He's a great advocate for people who have been affected by trauma and is known across Scotland, as well as overseas, for the work he does in raising the profile of adverse childhood experiences. Today, he's come along to talk about the work he does at Clydebank High and the importance of nurture and wellbeing in enabling children to access learning.
Okay, everybody can hear me fine, yes? Yeah,
Brilliant.
So what I'm going to talk about this evening is a lot of the work that we do in Clydebank High School. So it's going to be a bit of a mixture tonight. I'm going to be talking a bit about nurture. I'm going to be talking a bit about mindfulness. I'm going to be talking a bit about the Resilience CBT programme, and I'm also going to be talking a wee bit about just about brain development. I'm not going to go in too much into the neurobiological stuff because it can take up a bit of time, but I will dip into it during this presentation this evening. So again, I'm just going to tell you, this is Clydebank High School's Building Positive Relationships presentation. And as we work a lot on in Clydebank High School. This is one of our quotes. We have many more, but relationships are the glue for bonding and building. So where is Clydebank High School? Some of you might not know where Clydebank High School is, but Clydebank High School is in Western Bartonshire. Western Bartonshire has a population of around 90,000 people. It's the second most deprived council in terms of income deprived population. It's the third most deprived council in terms of employment deprived in population, and 26% of the children grow up in poverty. At age 16, there is a 16% poverty gap in attainment levels between the poorest pupils and their classmates. So that just gives you a wee kind of a flavour of the impact of poverty in our area. And we've got a general kind of understanding of where kind of poverty generally leads to, not all the time, but generally poverty leads to a lot of adverse childhood experience, which I will dip into during this presentation. So we're a large secondary school. We've got around 1,175 pupils. 60% of our pupils are living in SIMD, the Scottish Index of Multiple Deprivation. Historically, high numbers of pupils struggle with the transition from primary to Clydebank High. A big part of our transition programme as well as nurture, as we do a lot of transition visits for primary schools to high school. I know a lot of you are probably high schools as well, do a lot of visits for the primary pupils because they find that jump from a very small primary school to a big high school can be quite daunting for some of these young people. So our nurture group has been established in 2016. So we've been running nurture in our school for 6 years now. And then we also had to recognise that there's need for a whole school nurture approach. And one of the quotes I came out with is, nurture's just not about our nurture room. A nurture room should be every classroom in a school. So we've got 122 staff trained in the 6 principles of nurture. I will come into that a wee bit later on. So part of the Scottish Attainment Challenge was I'm part of the support hub. So we've got a family support hub and I'm part of that. So our support hub entails a lot of a range of interventions. And one of the interventions just at the top here is we've got a family opportunities team. We've got a lady in our school who works with a lot of families. A lot of families may come through maybe our nurture groups, parents or whatever else, or through parts of the school. But she's got a big job, especially at the moment, with what's going on around Scotland, around the world just now, really, with the fuel costs going up, bills going up, food going up, and all these things. And some parents are really struggling. So she can arrange monetary issues for them. She can arrange interviews for jobs, doctor appointments, and many other things. So she's got quite a big job in our team. We've also got a youth engagement officer. We've got increased time for a school counsellor. So we've got a school counsellor in mostly, probably just about full time now in our school. We've got additional staff, 0.4 for the DHT. We've got an adult learning programme as well. So one of the adult learning programmes in the school was a computer course for parents, and it's to give them some skills around computer work and whatever else, because I know it's such an important thing now to know about a bit about your way around a computer, etc. We also developed mindfulness across the school, and we developed a nurture group, which I'm going to go into in detail later on, and we developed a whole school nurturing approach. So there's lots going on in our hub at the moment. So what were the key expected outcomes? To improve school ethos with nurture used as a shared framework for understanding social and emotional needs. Evidence of the implementation of the nurture principles in the classroom. Awareness of body language, modelling and positive relationships. We're really focusing a lot on relationships, and I will go into a lot in detail about that again later on in some of these slides. So we really focus on relationships because they are the antidote to a lot of issues surrounding our young people. So many young people included in mainstream school throughout the secondary education. So we established our nurture group in 2016. The nurture group was called First Connection. That wasn't us as staff, it's myself and another female member of staff who run the nurture group. We're fully trained nurture teachers. And the name First Connection came from the young people. So more or less the name came about. We were doing a bit of brainstorming around what we could call a nurture group. So our nurture group starts at first thing in the morning. The pupils don't come later on. It's a first thing in the morning. So they'll come to the nurture group at 10 to 9 in the morning. I will show you a wee picture in the next slide of our nurture room. So the kids will come first thing in the morning, 10 to 9. They don't go to registration. They don't go to period 1. So they spend registration and period 1 with us 5 mornings. So that's every morning they're with us for more or less registration in first period, and then they will go to second period. So the pupils started to identify the power of coming to nurture first thing in the morning, because their home environments in the morning might have been a bit chaotic. They might have been having worries from the previous day. They might have fell out with maybe friends on their way into school. There could be various things that have happened before coming into school morning. Could be couldn't get access to a school uniform. So the best thing for them that they thought was that first connection in the morning. And the kids made up that first name. So they came up with the name from, it's first thing in the morning, and nurture is all about connecting with each other. So the pupils come up with the name First Connection, because they felt that first connection was crucial for them to move on with the rest of their day. So we identified a school nurture room. Again, that can be a bit of an issue for some schools. It's trying to get ownership of your own nurture room. And I know previous schools I've discussed with this in the past have put big issues trying to get a nurture room. But I think it's crucial, as I'll talk about later on during this presentation, that you need to have a safe space and identified nurture room for your young people. You cannot be using maybe one room and then saying to the next day we're going to be moving to another room. this is their safe space. You need to have familiarity, and that same nurture room for them is so crucial for them, for safety and whatever else. So then we move into the process of identifying our nurturing, which we've done, and I'll show you a picture of it in the next slide. Some of you may have seen it before. Then we go through the selection process for nurture intervention. We send letters to parents or carers. We then do the Boxall assessment tool. This identifies areas of development needed. So the nurture Boxall profile looks at strands. It looks at the diagnostic profile, and the diagnostic profile looks at where that young person is struggling in the school, where they're struggling in the classroom environment, and the developmental looks at where are they, what have they missed out on from growing up through the adolescent. So the nurture Boxall is it's a great tool, a really, really good tool. So we identify 8 pupils. Now, we have up to our nurture group to 10 pupils. We thought that was a good number to go at. We did start with 8, but over the last year, we've now went to 10. We've got 2 nurture practitioners in the room, and we identify strategies and resources for intervention through the Boxall profile. So this helps us understand how the young person is organised through a developmental lens and set developmentally appropriate interventions. So we hear me consistently during this presentation using the word a developmental lens. And I will knock on that as we go through these slides. So the next picture I've got up here, so this is our nurture room. Some of you might have seen it. It's quite a very spacious room. As you see up at the back here, we've got a seating area, and sometimes we can get parents into the room as well, and that's a nice area maybe for parents just as it, not with the nurture pupils, but maybe if we're having a wee chat with some of the parents about how the nurture pupils are getting on, or maybe we're running wee parent programmes for them, and that's one of the plans that we're hoping to be organising very soon. I'm hoping to be running a programme in the school, and it's called Parenting with Keeping the Brain and Body in Mind. And it's about letting the caregivers or the parents of these young people understand a bit about how the brain develops as well, and how to co-regulate with their young people. So it's not just the young people who are getting access to this. We're hoping to, we understand we've got the teachers trying to understand this, but we're trying to give the parents the tools as well, because we really need to reform the environment where these young people are raised. So again, it's a very spacious room. We've got a seating area down there. That's for the nurture group. As you see on the left-hand side, we've got a cooker. We have got 2 sinks. Marbles down the bottom. So it's a really, really good room. We've got toasty makers for the kids to make their toast. We've got the oven if they want to make anything else. We've got a kettle. We've got a fridge up the back of the room for their orange juice, whatever. So this really the structure. I'll kind of just give you a quick routine in the morning. So the kids will come in at 10 to 9. They will then make their toast, their tea, if they want fresh orange juice or a breakfast bar. And we sit round the table. And that's a very important part of nurture, is sitting together round a table, having a chat, having a conversation about how their night's been, how was their day yesterday in school. That can be quite an obstacle at the start of nurture, because some of these young people might not feel comfortable eating round a table. They might not have experienced eating round a table as much. So it's a good way of building their confidence and building attachment and getting them to know us. I'm also going to kind of quickly discuss while I'm on this topic of the nurture room is our nurture pupils, our secondary school pupils generally come in the middle of August. The nurture group will not start in the middle of August. The nurture group will start and begin nurture in the middle of November or the start of November. That gives us the opportunity to assess how these pupils are managing in secondary school. So it's given us more or less a 2-month window, a 2.5-month window to see how the pupils are settling in. Some will be identified maybe through primary, but I've seen in many occasions that a pupil will come from primary school and they've been identified in nurture, but they seem to adapt quite well to secondary school environment. So what happens then, we will identify these pupils, we'll bring them into the nurture room in about November time, and it gives them a settling in period. And from November through to the Christmas holidays, I do not do any of the resilience programme. I do not do any mindfulness. I do not do any of the resilience stuff or any of that. It's all about building relationships. So we've an art teacher who comes into the room as well. So we do a lot of artwork. and that's where it's more or less art therapy. And it's amazing when you're doing artwork with young people, how it just creates conversation. So we've got kids who, they design their own mugs. So part of the nurture process of building relationships is giving them ownership of the room, and they'll create their own mugs. So they'll paint their mug, and we'll get it, they'll design it all themselves, and that's giving them their mug, which they use in the morning coming in. And then we'll start to maybe watch Inside Out, and a lot of you probably do that in your school anyway. Inside Out gives them a wee feel about emotions, and then we maybe do some painting about the film. We maybe do some discussion about the film, again around emotions and things like that. But it's very light, and that 2-month window is totally focused on building relationships, because we all know that, especially young people that come into nurture, they've maybe experienced quite adversity, or they've had a lot of people coming in and out of their life. So a crucial part of that is building the relationships and building the trust, and making that a safe space for them so they can discuss how they feel. I will go into that later on during these slides, but it's really to create that piece of safety. I more or less call it, when you're inviting them into the nurture room, they're coming into a new environment. So when I talk about the Bruce Perry regulate, relate, reason, these pupils, young people, are coming into your nurture room. They don't really know you. They're in a new room. They're in a new environment. They're in a new school. So what we're really need to do with them over that 2-month period, from November kind of through to December time, is regulate them. You're more or less regulating them. You're getting their body down to a state where they're not as anxious. They feel safe. Their nervous system's no prime for, I need to leave this room. And then we're more or less, we're getting to the relate, connect, building relationships with them, feeling the emotional safety, and then we can hit the reasoning part, which is the bit where we need to get to, is the reasoning part of their brain. And that's when we can start to mold these young people into, I always say, returning themselves, to try and make a better version of themselves and give them the best opportunities we possibly can. So again, nurture's not just begin straight in right away with interventions. We need to regulate these young people, and then we need to make sure they're safe with reasoning, whatever else. Regulate, relate with them, and then reason. So the nurture groups are developed around the 6 principles of nurture. I will break each principle down a wee bit further on. So children's learning is understood developmentally. The classroom, or the nurture room, but I would bring this into a classroom as well. The classroom offers a safe base. The importance of nurture for the development of well-being. Language is a vital means of communication. All behaviour is communication, and the importance of transition in these young people's lives. This next slide I'm going to put up, I did say I was going to go into a wee bit of the neurobiological stuff, which I am. Some of you may have seen this slide before. It's based on a lot of Bruce Perry's work. So this slide is based on the sequential nature of brain organisation and the sequential nature of processing incoming information. So what this more or less replicates is the upside down triangle of a brain. And if you think of the bottom part here, where regulate, this is the bottom part of our brain, the part where the regulate is, that's the bottom part, that's where our brainstem is. And Bruce Perry talks quite a bit about this, and the kids really understand it well too. So we talk about the information that we process. The information that we process, and people really don't, a lot of people don't understand this, that the brain processes information sequentially. Okay, the brain processes. Somebody shouting there, their speaker on. The brain processes information from the bottom up. Okay, so the lower parts of the brain process the information first, and that's also through our 5 senses. Everything we see, everything we hear, everything we smell, everything we taste, and everything we touch. They're all processed from the bottom up. So if you think of the regulate, relate, reason, and I always call it regulate, relate, connect, and then reason, and then reflect. It's about going through that process. And I always talk about tone of voice as well. Our tone of voice is so important, because if you're maybe raising your voice or shouting quite loud at a young person, it's not going to get back. It's not going to get by the relate part of the brain. It's going to get stuck at the regulation part. It's not going to hit these higher parts of the brain. So again, the regulation parts of the brain are more or less for breathing and temperature, heart rate and blood pressure. The relate is more or less, so the relate and connect, I call it, is more or less our emotional response and attachment. So that's our emotional part of the brain. The lower parts, I would get back to the lower parts again. I always say it, these process information from the bottom, and then they've got to go through certain processes to get to the top. That's again, the top part is calm, connected, and fully engaged. So a young person does not, for a young person to learn maths, English, science, geography, whatever that is, they need to be the reasoning part of their brain. They need to be the top part of their brain. The crowning glory, as they call it, the chief executive, they've got to be the CEO. But first of all, that has got to go through these bottom parts first. And it's gone through, like I would say, a wee obstacle course. So it's gone through the regulated, I'm okay, I feel safe, that the person I'm with is understanding, that I've got a good relationship with them. And then we're hitting the top part of the brain and they're ready to learn. So the next slide I've got up here is a bit regarding trauma and brain development. Long-term stress, I will say long-term stress without a buffer. I talk a lot about this. The higher parts of the brain are underdeveloped and the lower are oversensitized. So we talk about the adverse childhood experiences. In fact, we talk about adversity, and we talk about adversity without a buffer. A person who's not got MD at home to look after them, they're caught in amongst chaos and adversity, maybe parents trying to manage their own trauma, parents with mental health issues with no MD they can turn to. Long term, that has a major impact in young people, major impact, a major impact in their brain development. So this slide is more or less looking at a child with typical development and a child with developmental trauma. So if we look at typical development first, and are looking at it through the context of the upside down triangle of the brain, and we're starting for the survival. So the survival more or less is closed. That's less, they're not feeling in survival. They're more regulated. They're more social and emotionally engaged, and their cortex is open for business. Their cortex is open for learning. So a young person who with typical development is generally in that mode. Okay, so their cortex is opening. They're rational and reflective. They're calm and connected, and they're fully engaged in learning. So if we look at the other side and a child who's coming into your classroom with developmental trauma, and we look again, the upside down triangle of the brain, the cognition part at the top, the thinking brain is closed. It's more reactive. They're more or less tuned up in a fight or flight response. And I always say the fight or flight response is permanently on. It's permanently on, wired for protection, connect, all these things. So again, starting from the bottom, their survival part of the brain is very, very wide open. Their stress response has been activated. They're struggling with regulation. Their social and emotional part of their brain is irrational. They don't know how to manage their emotional skills, and their cognition is just closed. So they're more or less all down the lower parts of their brain. So again, they're more reactive, they're tuned up, their fight or flight's on, and sometimes permanently on. The next slide I'm going to just focus on here is some of our nurture, the nurture principles. Some of you will be familiar with the nurture principles, but I will go into detail in some parts of it. So to me, this is one of the most important things that I focus on a lot, and where most of the kids I work with. So more or less nurture principle 1, and I will be talking about this during the next 2 slides as well. So learning is understood developmentally. The understanding of social and emotional development and attachment in the brain. And I always think, get to know the child, think young. So when I talk about think young, I always think about the chronological age, and I will talk a wee bit about that in a second. They've got their chronological age and they've got their developmental age. Okay, so again, I'm going to talk a wee bit about that anyway. So we talk about not chronological, where are they developmentally? We also explore their background. What's their history of adversity? What's their impact? How has that impacted their brain development? So again, what is their history of adversity and how has that impacted their brain development? Use of standardised assessment tools, again, the Boxall profile. Respond to the child as they are and not as they should be. What bits of social development has a child missed out? And what impacts? What bits might they need to relearn? in school as part of focus and nurture interventions. So what I talk about chronological age and developmental age, you might have a young person who looks, walks, talks like a 14-year-old, but they've got the neuropsychological infrastructure and the social skills of a 6-year-old. Okay, so we tend to focus a lot on that in our school as well, and we try to really understand that you may have a group of second years, for talking's sake, second years, they're coming to your class, and it's very difficult to manage. We understand that, but you might have these kids who chronologically are 14, but some of them might have the developmental infrastructure of a 6-year-old. They've got the social skills of a 6-year-old. So a lot of the pattern in our nurture group, and where I generally come into this as well, and part of my other programs, we need to go back. So we need to go back with a developmentally informed and respectful way to help repair what was missing. So a young person's 14, chronologically 14, they've got the developmental infrastructure of a 6-year-old. So what we need to do is we need to go back, and always go back in a respectful way, in a developmental way, and repair what was missing that should have happened at that age, that should have happened in number 6. So that's why I always feel that it is important to understand how a young person, how their brain's organised through a developmental lens, and start to put in place developmental, sensitive and responsible expectations. Because if we don't, you're just setting up these people to fail. And what I would really think about that is you maybe put a young person, and the young person, for talking example here, a young person might be in a classroom. Again, they might be chronologically 14, but they've got the developmental infrastructure of a 6-year-old. And then you're starting to set them expectations of a 14-year-old. You're just setting them up to fail. They're either going to think they're bad, or they're not wanting to go back to the class again. So we need to go back in a respectful and developmental way and repair and try and amend what was missing back when they were a 6-year-old. So we need to do that in a sensitive and responsible way. The expectations, again, we need to take into account their developmental history with a developmental focus. And I keep talking about that all the time, about developmental, quite consistently, especially our young people from trauma-related backgrounds. Safe base. The environment is welcoming, safe, structured and predictable, and great attention is paid to detail. Now I just kind of paid a wee bit of attention to the detail in our nurture room. It's a safe space. Now, nobody is allowed into our nurture room. Not the head teacher, not the deputy head teacher, not any member of staff is allowed into our nurture room, apart from the 2 nurture teachers and the pupils. Because we want to have that space safe, because we don't want to start to build relationships with the young people, and they're starting to open up, which they do when they've built these relationships up with you, and they could be halfway through opening up a bit about what's going on in their home life, and you get a member of staff walking in. You might have lost that. They might have lost that chance forever. They might not want to get back into that ever again. So it's important that place is safe for them for that hour they spend with you. So the environment is welcoming, safe, structured, and that's what I mean by structured. There's nobody walking in and out the nurture room when they feel like it. That door closes and it's just for you and the nurture pupils. And great attention is paid to detail. They've got their mugs, they've got the ownership of the room with their own mugs, they've got their toast, they've got their tea, they've got their all the wee things that they like to make in the nurture room. They bring it back to the table, and we do that through repetition. Good positions of safe spaces inside and out to support emotional regulation. So even at the back of the room where I showed you the wee sofa, we sometimes can use that for a wee self-regulation zone. We actually use them in our school as well. It's so we talk a lot about self-regulation in our school. The teachers will use the language, are we regulated? Because if you tell a pupil to calm down, us as adults, if anybody tells you to calm down, you're not going to calm down. So the language is so important. We're quite aware about these seclusion rooms and all these things that they use in schools. So we call them departmental zones of regulation. The language is so much better. So you've seen a pupil showing distressed behaviour, and again, that's the language we use in our school. A pupil showing distressed behaviour. they will go along to a room with another member of staff who should and can co-regulate with them. So if you're using the language saying you're going to an exclusion room or you're going to a whatever it is, if you're saying we might need to just go along just now to a zone of regulation, you're using totally different language. You're using totally different language which they feel is acceptable as well, and they're not thinking they're bad or whatever. They're going along to self-regulate or co-regulate with another member of staff. So again, good provision of safe spaces. Again, the wee sofa at the back, we can use that for a wee bit of self-regulation as well for the pupils. And what I always talk about, and I will go on about it later on, is consistent co-regulation with a pupil, consistent co-regulation, patterns of co-regulation. These young people will be able to end up regulating themselves through repetition, which also we obviously know creates neuroplasticity. So boundaries are set and delivered clearly, fairly, and with sensitivity, emotional warmth. Adults are reliable and consistent in their approach to the children. The young people feel secure and to explore and allow increased coping strategies and engagement in learning. That's one of the big things that is important in nurture. And it's important to anyone working with young people is consistency. You're not coming in one day, and I always feel behaviour starts with me. If a young people's dysregulated and they may take out me, it tells me how they feel. It's absolutely nothing to do with what I'm doing. And I tend to say that to staff as well. If a young people are showing distressed behaviour, or you maybe thinking it's challenging behaviour, if you want to use that language, generally that behaviour has nothing to do with you. It's generally how they feel. So don't take it personally. So the nurture room offers a balance in a way that also manages to contain anxiety, reliable and consistent. The pupils, talking about myself here, the pupils will always get me the same way. They'll always get me the same way. I'll never be outrageously angry with them or show any dysregulation. They'll get me the same way because I need to be regulated. I need to be the adult, and I need to have the ability to be able to co-regulate with them. You've probably heard the saying, a dysregulated adult with a dysregulated child creates a me against you scenario, but a regulated adult with a dysregulated child creates a me with you scenario. And that's the way I work at all times. So safe base, we're now going to move on to 3. The importance of nurture for the development of a self-esteem and well-being. Understanding internal working model and gently challenge through positive interactions. And I always go through again about understanding how the young person's brain is organised. That's how when I'm always talking about developmentally informed, about learning about ACEs, learning about adversity, talking about trauma informed. And I always say, if you're going to be trauma informed or trauma responsive, you need to understand a bit about how the brain's organised from a developmental lens, and then you can start to apply appropriate intervention with these young people. So understanding internal working model and gently through positive interactions, and that's again, how is their brain organised? What do I need to, what strategy do I need to do to implement with these young people? Do they show behaviour that's more hyperarousal? Are they more in fight or flight? So what interventions, what structures do I need to put in for them to help manage the fight or flight response? Or they might be hypoarousal. They might go into freeze, they might shut down. So what strategies do I need to put in place to help them begin into hypoarousal, just shutting down? Talking therapy, everything is verbalised. Engage in reciprocal shared activities, play, meals are crucial at the start of your nurture groups, so important. Reading, talking about events and feelings. And also, if pupils can, if you can create a safe nurture base with reliable, consistent nurture practitioners, and I'll just go for all staff. If you've got staff who's predictable, if they're reliable, if you're going to get them mostly the same way, then that can open up conversations that are healthy and supportive for these young people. And that's a big part of nurture as well. So value the young people as individuals by noticing and giving them positive attention. I call that, we all hear the quote we've heard quite a bit. Most of the therapeutic moments take place in schools. Okay, most of the therapeutic moments don't take place in therapy, they take place in schools. Day in, day out relational moments make a difference. Now, we talk a lot about how these young people have experienced micro traumas, okay, and that's unpredictability, chaos, parents with mental health conditions, parent in prison, just parents are not managing themselves, and they micro traumas can have a big impact on them. But what about micro moments? These wee small interactions that we can have with these young people. It's nice to see you today, a pat on the shoulder, you're looking really well. How all these just micro moments can make a massive difference to these young people. We can give them stars in their jot, or we can give them merits. If some schools do merits, but I always say acknowledgement, and these micro moments make a massive impact on these young people. The awareness of growth mindset and improvement, I bring that down to neuroplasticity, and our young people understand what neuroplasticity is. They understand that through repetition, you can physically change your brain through repetition. It's got to be done through repetition. Celebrate success. How we celebrate success in our nurture room is not by giving them stars. It is by giving them acknowledgement, positive affirmations. But outside our nurture room, we have a good things happen wall. So what they do on the good things happen wall, if they've felt they've had a success that week, they might have been in time for school. They might have managed to do a bit of homework. They might have made a bird's house in woodwork. So what they do, they write on a bit of paper what they've achieved, and they stick up on the wall we've got outside our nurture room. And that just builds self-esteem about no end. It just builds so much self-esteem, so much confidence, and just it's a nice way of recognising, and them recognising themselves how well they've done. So I would say a good things happen wall is a really good idea if you're going to be having a nurture room, even a classroom. Understanding the child's working model of themselves, others and the world, their view of themselves, bad, unlovable, who thinks it's their fault. I'm just curious, my timer, I'm just checking my timekeeping. 1:45, I've got about 15 minutes. So, language is a vital means of communication. Language puts feelings into words. Tell the young people you belong here, I like you, you feel safe here. And that's what I was just talking about with the micro moments. These micro moments make such a difference. Again, micro traumas make a detrimental impact and derail these young people. But the micro moments can have such a big impact on these young people. It actually physically changes their brain. It changes the chemistry in their body. Instead of acting out their feelings, young people are helped to understand and name how they feel. I will explain a wee bit about that further on. The importance of non-verbal communication. Provide informal opportunities for talking and sharing, welcoming the children in the nurture group and having breakfast together. Again, I can't reiterate how important it is, the breakfast together in the morning, even every morning, although it's very important structurally for structure when they come into nurture at the beginning, but that connection every morning of just sitting around a table, sharing toast, tea, and just having a chat for 15, 20 minutes before we move on. So generally, the first 20 minutes of the morning, we would sit around the table with toast and tea. Then the pupils would put their dishes away, they would clean them, and then we would come back to the table. And I'm going to quickly go over just very quickly the structure of that. So on a Monday, we do artwork. We do art therapy on a Monday. We feel that's a nice, gentle way of bringing them in. We're actually doing like feeling spaces just now. We're making an emotions wall. They're kind of doing things around that. Previous nurture groups, we've built an emotions tree, a friendship tree. And we've done other things regarding Inside Out as well. So they help. A Tuesday would generally be my resilience programme, and I'm going to talk a wee bit about that further on. And then we maybe introduce mindfulness, and then again art therapy. And a Friday's a bit of a kind of an easier day. We'll do diaries on a Friday. So the diary on a Friday would ask them 3 questions. How has your week been? So any positive things from the week, and they write positive things. It could be I managed to come in the whole week, or it's maybe going to do something at the weekend. And one of the other questions for their diary is, try to think of this, any challenging situations from the week. So it's something challenging. They maybe struggle to get into a class. And then it says, how did you manage to cope with that challenging situation? And we date their diaries. So very early on in nurture, they might say, I didn't go in at all. I went and sat in a school toilet. I didn't want to go. But hopefully on the journey in nurture, we'll then see saying, I managed to self-regulate, I managed to use red, green thoughts, which I'm going to tell you about, I managed to use positive thinking to get my way into class through repetition. And that tells us the journey they're on as well. 4, 5, all behaviour is communication. Given what I know about this child and their development, what if the behaviour helps staff to respond in a firm but non-punitive way by being provoked or discouraged? If the child has a sense that their feelings are understood, this can help to diffuse difficult situations. Co-regulate with the child, as I spoke about earlier. Regulate, relate, then reason. You cannot relate to a child if they're not regulated. You have to go through that process. You cannot discuss anything with a young person when they're dysregulated. We can't communicate ourselves properly from a place of dysregulation. So we need to make sure, first of all, we're regulated, and we need to make sure when we're going to start a conversation with a young person that they're also regulated, because the information is just not going to go in. You're not going to be able to get to the rational thinking brain. So always regulate, make sure it could be simple things like some breathing exercises, just getting them relaxed, and then we're relating with them, how they're feeling. Obviously that part we're in their emotional brain, and then we can reason what's happened to you, what's happened today, what's happened last week, what's happened over the past. That's when the magic starts to happen, as I would say. So co-regulate with the child, regulate, relate, then reason. Restorative approaches. I always call restorative approaches. You've probably heard they've probably heard a rupture after a repair. Rupture after a repair is usually comes from a context of relationships. If you've built, listen, things go wrong as they generally do. They generally do, things go wrong, which are working with complex young people who've been through lots of adversity, and things go wrong, say, as they generally do. But if you've already built relationships with these young people, the rupture is dead easy to repair. If you've already built these relationships, it's so easy to repair. If you've not got relationships with them and they're just taking you as that person they've seen for the first time and you've given them a bit of a hard time, it's going to be very hard to repair. So from the context of the relationships, the rupture is dead easy to repair through that. What is this child trying to tell me? Understanding what a child is communicating, misbehaviour, bad behaviour, or we're going to look at it from a more curious, from more curiosity and say distress behaviour. So looking at this behaviour through a trauma-informed responsive lens, how can you think differently? How can I do things differently? So I'll ask staff that as well. How can I do things differently? How can we think differently? How can we look at this young person's behaviour? What is this young person communicating? What's went on in their life? Are there any history of adversity? We need to start asking ourselves questions before we judge and move in with punitive responses. So the importance of transition in children's lives. The awareness of numerous daily transitions the child makes. Changes in routine need to be carefully managed with preparation and support. Things in our school, what we kind of help young people with preparation is, some people might have 5-minute time out cards to get to class to avoid the crowds. Maybe all these wee sort of things. Caregiving into beginnings, welcome and endings. One of the things that we've got in school, as you see on here, we've got meet and greet. Other schools probably do it. So we have staff will be at their doors when the pupils are coming to class. And again, you hear me talking about micro moments. So these pupils are coming into your classroom. It's nice to see you. You're looking good. You've got a nice haircut. You're looking smart today. All these micro moments before they come into the class make a big impact. So we do a lot of meet and greet. We also do end and send. So end and send is that you're sending them to the next teacher in a good place. Lovely to have you in my class today. Enjoy your next period. Hope you have a nice time. All these sort of things. If it's come to the weekend, have a nice weekend, but enjoy your final period of the day. All these micro moments make such a big impact. So our staff meet and greet pupils. This is about those micro moments I was just talking about, the therapeutic moments. We also have senior management at the school gates and meeting these young people when they come into, and when you just walk in these our school doors, the deputy heads are there waiting on them and the head teacher to welcome them into school. And again, you hear me talking about micro moments. That's another one. So Clydebank High School, so what is nurture? I'm just going to quickly round this part up. Appropriate interactions and problem-solving approaches, again, from a developmental lens. social confidence, resilience, and I'll talk a bit about that in my next slide. That's gone through scaffolding experiences. I call it gradual exposure. To be able to regulate their own emotions and behaviour through patterns of co-regulation with an adult. To develop skills at their pace, age appropriate, not chronological, but developmental. To help them be part of a group, to help them make new friends, and to listen and share with others. So this is one of the interventions that I run in the school. This is called a Friends Resilience Programme. And what this programme is a CP, it's a cognitive behavioural therapy-based programme. It looks at anxiety, depression, attachment emotions, physiological, cognitive and behaviour processes. We do this in nurture, but it's staggered for much longer because we've got our nurture group for an hour in the morning, but 25 minutes of that or half an hour of that's breakfast and cleaning up. So we've really only got half an hour at this, but we also do artwork, mindfulness. So the resilience programme is staggered for a longer period through nurture, which is more beneficial to the young people. Our other young people in the school, anybody can access it. So this is a 10-week programme, and I'll quickly go through the skills that the young people pick up. So it's a CBT-based programme, a cognitive behavioural therapy-based programme. It looks at anxiety, depression, attachment, emotions, physiological, cognitive and behaviour processes. So what we learned during the programme. So the skills taught, again, this is open to every pupil in our school. When the programme gets put out or it's emailed out to parents, they can access this programme. So awareness of body clues, non-verbal and verbal communication. We do a lot of breathing exercises, 4-7-11, 4 square. We do a lot of relaxation activities that can suit art therapy and mindfulness. We do self-awareness and awareness of others. I will go into this in a bit more detail. The importance of sleep, healthy eating and being active every day. We look at brain and body connection and neuroplasticity. We also learn the young people about the infrastructure of the brain, which impact how we think, feel and act. And we learn about the cortex. We learn about the limbic area, the emotional brain, and we're learning about the brainstem survival. So they're learning about the infrastructure of the brain through this programme as well. So I learn them, about the infrastructure of the brain before we actually get into the resilience programme, because I can keep going back to the brain when we're learning about different parts of the programme and what I'm showing them. So what they're learning, problem solving skills, 5-stage processes of solving problems. I'm going to get into that in the next slide. Coping skills, using thought challenges, red and green thoughts. So red are unhelpful thoughts, okay? We look at, and green are helpful thoughts. We look at positive role models, or I would call that a healthy role model, because some of the young people can have a positive role model, but they're not very healthy. So I look at healthy role models. That's a totally different way of looking at it. They may have a positive role model who's not using healthy cope mechanisms to show them. They might be involved in drugs or alcohol, and maybe the kids are saying, oh, look what they do. But I look at healthy role models, which is more important. So the green unhelpful thoughts that we talk about looks at the thoughts, feelings, body sensations and actions. So we're learning the young people that everything starts with a thought. These are all intertwined. A thought becomes a feeling, anxiety, stress, worry, depression, all these sort of things. And then that becomes a body sensation, butterflies, tension, heartbeat racing, shaking, sweating, all these things. And it become an action. It could be avoiding going somewhere. It could be unhelpful cope mechanisms. And we learn a lot of that through the window of tolerance as well. So the resilience programme is learning about, again, the thoughts, feelings, body sensations and actions. So problem solving skills, coping skills, gradual exposure. Again, I call that scaffolding. Positive role models, more or less healthy role models. You might admire them, but are they a healthy role model? And support networks. Who in their lives can they turn to for support as well? So cognitive. I learn the young people about the mind and brain. So we talk a lot about subconscious and conscious behaviour as well. The young people learn about conscious thinking and subconscious thinking. And then we talk about the difference between the mind and the brain. So if I'm like asking the young people, what's your brain? Generally, they'll get that right. okay, it's in your head, and we say it's an organ, but it does so much more. It's got 86 billion neurons, and it's changing minute by minute during the day. And then we'll talk about our mind. So our mind is more or less external. Okay, our mind, we process our mind through more or less through our 5 senses. And that more or less interacts with our brain, and it can affect how we think, feel, and act. So we talk a lot about the mind and the brain, subconscious and conscious behaviours. Then we identify and expressions of inner thoughts. Again, we talk about that as monkey mind. So we've got this monkey in our mind, or we talk about it as the puppy mind, where what does a puppy generally do? So I bring in a bit about the puppy mind, and that's a bit from the mindfulness program. What happens when we've got a new puppy? It generally wanders away, it sniffs about, it generally picks things up, and generally comes back with a bit of a mess. Our minds can do that. Our mind wanders, we start to ruminate, catastrophize, and we end up causing so much internal pain for ourselves through anxiety, worry, stress. So it's about learning to work with our mind as well as our brain. So we also use self-talk. And again, that's green thoughts. We might have a pupil going to class who might think, I'm going to this class again, I don't want to go. Sometimes it can be dead simple. Things like give us 3 positive thoughts. What's coming up? Oh, I'm going to my dance class tonight. Oh, I'm going to stay with my pal at the weekend. Oh, and it's Friday as well. And I've done that with people, and they say, well, I'm away to class. As quickly as that, it can change the chemistry in their body. So they learn about self-talk. And again, that's the way we talk to ourselves in our head. So we learn how to challenge unhelpful self-talk. And again, that's through the thoughts, feelings, behaviour pathway. Everything starts with a thought. I don't know if you've heard the saying is about our thoughts can make you well, your thoughts can make you sick. And how true is that? So we're working a lot with managing our thoughts first. If we can manage our thoughts, that's going to change how we feel. It's going to change our body sensation. It's going to change our actions. We also do a lot of attention training, and that's a lot of visualization. So I was doing a bit of visualization with a pupil not long ago. He had a maths test, and I said, what are you thinking about your maths test? And he said, I'm going to fail. So over a period of time, I sat with him at different parts of the week in the build-up, and I said, I want to visualise yourself in that classroom. I want to visualise yourself sitting at the test. Right, so I'm starting to use a bit of visualisation with him. So I want you to visualise yourself in that class, okay? I want you to feel confident. So I'm getting to feel confident. I'm getting to feel and put the best version of yourself in that classroom. And his actions are going to be more positive. And it was such a powerful impact because I was doing that through repetition with him, and actually done very, very well in his test. Coming from a place of, I'm going to fail, to say, right, let's work at this. Let's use visualization, because your brain doesn't know if it's in the past or the future. You take it there by thought alone. So your brain doesn't know if it's sitting here or it's tomorrow, period 5. But let's take our brain and our mind into a situation, be the best version of yourself. So we work a lot in visualization as well. Attention training, paying attention to positive things. Self-reward, identifying the positive aspects of difficult situations. So here are some of the quotes from our pupils who have participated in the Resilience programme. I know how to control my emotions in uncomfortable situations. It is good to talk about things and help problem solve situations. It's helped me stay in control of my feelings using self-regulation skills. The Resilience programme is very good. It's helped me to use breathing techniques and manage unhelpful thoughts. The programme has helped build my confidence and talk to people more about my problems. Learning about the brain and body has helped me regulate my emotions using the bottoms-up approach. I thought that was very powerful. I'm just wearing my time. I think I'll give it 5 minutes. So this is the other programme. This is a Mindfulness in Schools programme that we do in school. Again, I do this through my nurture group. So the nurture group are getting the nurturing interventions, they're getting art therapy, they're getting mindfulness, they're getting resilience CBT, they're getting quite a nice package there. But the mindfulness programme is also open to every pupil in the school. But I also, as a school mindfulness lead, I do mindfulness with staff. So I run a 9-week twilight session with staff, and it's giving them the tools to manage their day as well. So, introduction. One of the school's other initiatives is to introduce mindfulness. It's been shown to be effective in promoting positive mental health and well-being in young people and adults, and increasing self-efficacy in professional roles. Before mindfulness can be taught to young people, staff have to be mindfulness practitioners themselves. So staff mindfulness needs to precede pupil mindfulness initiative in schools. And I always say that to our staff, for you to teach anything to pupils, you need to practice it yourself. You can't be standing in front of young people telling them how wonderful mindfulness is, but you don't teach it yourself. You're just more or less lying to them. So I practice mindfulness on a daily basis, morning and night, and it really puts me in a good place, But what I will say to staff, if you're going to teach it to young people, you need to be practicing it yourself. So the key objectives of becoming a mindful school are for both staff and pupils will feel happier, calmer and more fulfilled, getting on better with others, including pupils, parents and colleagues, work more effectively by bringing increased awareness to the process and increase resilience in the face of stress and difficulties. So Mindfulness.B Foundation staff training. So in a few weeks, I'm going to be starting staff training. So I'm going to be running an 8-week twilight session for staff. So they will come for 8 weeks. They'll learn a bit about mindfulness. After that, they've got to be practicing it for about 3 to 4 months consistently. Once they've done that, they can then go on another course to teach the young people. So they'll be able to teach the young people the .B course. Then after that, they can do what I do. They can be the school mindfulness lead. It's a bit of journey and a lot of work, but it's worth it. So the Introduction to Mindfulness course. This 2-hour course was delivered in May 2018. I was attended by 18 teachers, including myself. 100% of the participants rated its overall satisfaction with the course of extremely satisfied. Of the 18 participants taking part in the Introduction to Mindfulness session, 15 put themselves forward for an 8-week mindfulness course to start September 18. Where are we now? We are now self-sustainable. We used to have educational psychologists coming in to do mindfulness in schools. We don't need them now. I can teach the staff. We have now 10 fully trained mindfulness teachers. We have now over 50 members of staff who've completed the 8-week .B. So staff have been through the Twilight .B Foundations course. That's given them tools for mindfulness themselves. And I'll tell you what, one of the people said to me not long ago, very quickly, that they recognise the staff that have done mindfulness. So they must be coming from a more regulated place. So the .B pupil mindfulness intervention course. Why introduce mindfulness to your school? The potential benefits. Studies of school mindfulness programs, including the Mindfulness in Schools project .B curriculum, provide evidence that they have the potential to improve some pupils' behaviour, psychological health and executive functioning, including regulating attention and behaviour, feeling calmer and more positive, healing cope with stress and anxiety, improving concentration and focus, and getting on better with others. So I'm going to get through just a wee bit this just quickly because I know we're running out of time. We could be at 11 o'clock. So the introduction session, I've got to make sure the pupils are interested, sell it to them as best as I can, no make it boring, no make it as a thing they don't want to come to. So we need to first introduce them to mindfulness. So to introduce mindfulness in a way that's engaging and persuasive, discuss around neuroplasticity. So I will discuss a lot about the brain to them. And you actually can change your brain through repetition. You can structurally change your brain. We also talk about the mind and where is your mind. You can train your mind to be in the present moment. Don't be mindfulness practices. So again, we discuss the difference between the mind and the brain. So what does the course include? Lesson 1 is over 9 weeks, so it's 10 weeks we do the introduction. So lesson 1, we talk about paying attention, training the muscle of your mind. Lesson 2 is taming the animal mind. And that's more or less, sometimes our mind can be like a monkey. We get the chattery mind. Sometimes it can be like an elephant. It's unstoppable. We can't stop it. And then it's lesson 3, we talk about recognising worry, noticing how your mind plays tricks on you. So always kind of their quote says, most of the things that we think about or worry about never happen. Most of the things we worry about never happen. But we only can deal with that situation in that present moment. Lesson 4 is being here now. So we learn a bit about reacting and responding. Lesson 5, we talk about moving mindfully. And that's what mindfulness is good. It's not just about sitting and breathing. So we do mindful walking. It's called samurai walking. So there's a way we walk mindfully. There's a way when we're walking, taking in things round about us. Not just about walking down the street and closing off for everyone. So mindfulness is not just about being still. stepping back and watching the thought traffic. So it's about recognising. You've probably heard the Rumi quote about the visitor. So it's about treating these thoughts as a visitor, and actually recognising what's going on. And how can you manage these thoughts when they come into your mind? Befriending the difficult, managing your emotions, taking in the good, being present with your heart, and that's a lot of gratitude. And then we pull it all together. The kids get certified at the end, so they get a mindfulness certificate at the end. And it's quite an intense program, but it's really beneficial. So bringing it all together. Nurture. We have 150 staff. 92 are trained in the 6 principles. So very quickly, we do 6 principle training. We all know about the 6 principles of nurture. I'm fully trained. I went for 4 days training, done all the stuff at the Vauxhalls. But we give our staff 6 principles of nurture training. That's 6 hours training on the 6 principles. They're not forced to go. We don't say, you're going to nurture training tomorrow. We give them the option. They'll get released from class. They may have a free period anyway, but they need to want to go. So now we have 150 staff, more or less. Now, I've done this presentation about a year ago. We've now got over 100 odd staff trained, and that's janitors, kitchen staff, cleaners. Anybody in our school who comes into contact with a young person is trained in the 6 principles of nurture. Mindfulness. We have our own school mindfulness lead, myself. We have 10 fully trained mindfulness teachers. I'm one of them. We have 47 staff who have completed the .B foundations. So we've got 47 staff who are ready now to move on to do .B training. They can get through that training. They've now done the mindfulness-based living. I'm going to be doing more staff next month. Mindfulness for pupils. We have around 400 pupils who have completed the 9-week mindfulness .B course. School exclusions. We had a look at a school exclusion. We had 91 exclusions in 1 year. Since the introduction of nurture training for staff, within the first year, they dropped to 54, and the second year to 34. So, and as I say, the positive progress continues regarding that. We did have a wee hiccup through the COVID times, but I think I've experienced a lot of dysregulation. So, again, looking at when we introduced all these interventions, we had 91 exclusions in 1 year. And then we introduced nurture training for staff, mindfulness, resilience program. They dropped to 54, and then they dropped to 34. And again, that progress continues. So, forward a wee bit there. So bringing it all together and onto this. So very quickly, a couple of years ago, we had a Clydebank High School Nurturing Positive Relationships Festival. We had Suzanne Zedek and James Docherty there. We brought Suzanne in from the scientific background, and then we brought James in for lived experience. It was a morning and an afternoon. So we had 600 staff. So the 600 members of staff all over Western Berkshire Council attended that day. We are going to run another one, hopefully, next year. That one was just before the pandemic. So we managed to squeeze it in before everyone went into lockdown. We had 600 attending over morning and afternoon. We had 47 stalls in our dining hall. Some of you might have listened today, might have been there. And we had about 12 workshops. So it was a massive day. Again, we brought Suzanne Zedek in from the science and James in for lived experience. We also won an award. We won an award for making a difference in secondary schools. Unfortunately, we were supposed to go to the Grosvenor Hotel to get a presentation, but it was cancelled due to COVID, so we had to just pick it up. So that was another award we picked up. I was also in one of the newspapers not long ago. That was from the Mindfulness in Schools conference. So I was talking at a big conference. I think there were about 1,000 people at it online, actually. It was supposed to be in London, but COVID kind of put stop to that. So it was an online conference, and we won global acclaim, more or less, for the work we're doing regarding mindfulness. So just to wrap this up today, I'm just going to leave you a quote from Bruce Perry. The more healthy relationships a child has, the more likely they will be able to recover from trauma and thrive. Relationships are the agents of change and the most powerful therapy in human love.
Thank you so much, Gerry. Your passion just comes across so clearly. We really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today all about nurture and well-being. Thank you. Gerry is also coming back to do a webinar for us during Adoption Week Scotland. Thank you for joining our education discussion today. A reminder that our helpline is open Monday to Friday. and the details are on the screen. And we also have an education website. We also run education consultations, which are open to families to call up if they're looking for some support with education. And we also offer that service to professionals too.